stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. We now come to debate on Part 2, Clauses 6 to 17 and the schedule. The question is that Part 2 stand part. The Honourable Leanne Dalzell.
Mr Chairman, I want to start the contributions on Part 2 for a number of reasons. And one is because obviously I've been involved in the discussions around the establishment of the Commission legislation, but also having chaired the Select Committee, having the opportunity to hear the submissions. And I just want to place on record again my disappointment at the number of people that actually submitted on the bill, because everyone's kind of agreed on both sides of the House that this is quite important. And yet 13 submissions were received and we heard 7 of them. I was very disappointed that Business New Zealand didn't want to be heard, and I would have thought that, because I'd actually asked the Select Committee clerk to arrange for the CTU and Business New Zealand to get half an hour each, one next to the other, so that we could actually engage with both and get a real sense of where their points of commonality are, because they've been working very closely together on productivity for a number of years when we were in government, and I felt that that would flow through into a really good discussion at the Select Committee. And then to find that Business New Zealand didn't want to be heard, after giving quite a narrow submission, I was unfortunately, I have to report to the House, I was disappointed. So the CTU did give a very good submission, and they really did talk about what made a difference in terms of looking at productivity. And as a result of that, I've moved 3 amendments to Part 2. One relates to the purpose of the Commission, and the first of these is to rewrite the purpose clause. Now, I don't know why, and I actually kick myself now because I can't understand why we use the word principle, the principal purpose of the Commission. So I've rewritten it to say the purpose of the Commission is to facilitate policy development, practical activities and research which will boost productivity on a sustained basis in order to support the overall well-being of New Zealanders through the development of a high-wage, high-skill, sustainable economy that delivers benefits on an equitable basis to New Zealanders, having regard to a wide range of communities of interest and population groups in New Zealand society. Now, anyone who's read the original bill will know that that picks up a lot of the language that we had within that, but it actually starts to define what it is that we're trying to achieve, because there is no point looking at productivity in a narrow sense, but if we don't get that benefit shared on an equitable basis, then it will simply go to, we might see a productivity improvement and a greater disparity in terms of the wealth sharing in our nation, and that we know will actually minimise or reduce our productivity over time because the outcomes will be so inequitable. So, and I think we have to recognise New Zealand for what it is and what communities of interest make up New Zealand, and we do have to also recognise that productivity does have a very broad definition. The second set of changes relate to Clause 9.1. And in that are the Commission's functions, and this is to extend the Commission's functions. So the 2 functions that are in the bill as reported back are to hold inquiries and report to the referring ministers about productivity-related matters, and on its own initiative to undertake in public research about productivity-related matters, promote public understanding of productivity-related matters. So, and if you go back to what I've moved in terms of the purpose, I've talked about practical activities and research as well. So the practical activities are these, and that's what I'm seeking to add under Clause 9.1, which is C, support initiatives which develop practical productivity projects and provide an overview of the range of tools, models available to maximise multi-factor productivity in workplaces. And I did think, after having reflected on what the CTU said in their submission, that workplace productivity is an important component of the total view. And if the Productivity Commission is really going to provide some grunt in this area, it really does need to lead the way. And there are a range of tools that are available, and they differentiate between the public sector and the private sector. There are different drivers in both sectors, and I think that they do need to be reflected in the way the Productivity Commission operates. And I think part of having these initiatives specified as an activity of the Productivity Commission is to ensure that it becomes the single point of entry, that the government portal to productivity. Mr. Chairman.
Honourable Leanne.
And I think that is a hugely advantageous position in terms of the credibility of the organisation long term. So that's the first one. The second one, and I seem to have called it E instead of D, but that's just a little typo, but it means that I took D out and merged it into C, so I do apologise. Run inclusive events, workshops on productivity and have educational tools and other information on its website. And again, that's to kind of bring it together as a portal where people can go for a one-stop shop approach to productivity. Organise events and activities as appropriate with the Australian Productivity Commission. The more I thought about that option was how much, everyone knows that I'm a huge admirer of the Australian Productivity Commission, and I guess, one day have this hope that it will be an Australian-New Zealand Productivity Commission. And the idea of actually putting it in legislation that those events and activities are authorised by statute appealed to me. So I thought that was a very good one. And the final one was to produce an annual report on productivity. And I think unless we actually require the Productivity Commission to annually report on these matters, then where are the benchmarks? Where are the measures against which we are going to look for the success that we believe that this model could bring? The final set of amendments that I've got on the terms of reference, and what I've specifically put into the terms of reference is a new 1B into clause 12. And I've said in there, in setting the terms of reference for an inquiry, the referring ministers must first consult with Business New Zealand. They didn't deserve that because they didn't front, but there you go. Must first consult with Business New Zealand and the New Zealand Council of Trade Unions to ensure that the concept of social partnership is embedded in the work of the Productivity Commission. Now, I think that language actually signals a really important aspect of what the difference between the 1990s and today. Because in the 1990s, the concept of social partnership was just completely lost. The Employment Contracts Act took the word union out of legislative being, and so industrial relations were to operate without the word union in there. Collective bargaining was around contracts, not agreements, and there was no real understanding of how important these things were to the concept of productivity. And without embedding that relationship into the work of the Productivity Commission, I can't see any other way of ensuring that we get the best in terms of our workplace contribution to that productivity growth. But I actually played with the idea of locking this concept of social partnership into the workplace productivity issues. But then I thought, the more I thought about it, the more I thought, no, I'm going to take workplace productivity out of that, because actually the social partnership is critical to all issues relating to productivity, quite fundamentally. So I hope that the Minister does look at that one and think very carefully about whether that might improve the way the Productivity Commission may operate. And then finally, that the Ministers and the Commission shall ensure that the terms of reference require a range of models to be used in any research and analysis. Now, the Minister may well say that that actually is taken for granted in the way that we've changed the legislation as it's gone through the Select Committee. I'd really like to know, as a matter of law, that the Commission's going to have to be required not to take a narrow focus on various forms of or models of measuring productivity and productivity gains over time. The final thing that I just want to say in this contribution, I may want to come back to it after listening to my colleagues' contributions, is the process around selecting the members of the Commission. And I want to follow on from a comment that my colleague Shane Jones made. The selection of the chair designate, I don't believe was a very good process. We were informed by letter on the Thursday before the appointment was made, finally, and we were advised that this was the appointment the government was going to make. It's not an appointment I would have chosen, but that's by the by. It's the process, and I hope that going forward the government thinks very seriously about getting a more balanced approach to the Commission, and I think that will